Hi, I'm Jo Clark, and thanks so much for joining me today. This is the Redefining Midlife podcast, a podcast designed for the 40-plus woman who is determined to challenge society's myths and beliefs around midlife. It's for the woman who is inspired and ready to define midlife her way. Join me each week as I chat to health and wellness experts for up-to-date information on how to live well, as well as some special conversations with incredible everyday women redefining what midlife can look like. Here's to making our next half of life even better than the first. My special guest today is the very talented Rosie Gore from Rosie Cakes. Rosie and I have been friends for the past 2 years, and we met through our business mastermind. We've been there for each other as we learn and grow our new businesses. Now, Rosie is a great example of an everyday woman like you and I, and she's redefining her middle of life. During the conversation, we get to know more about Rosie and the path that led her to where she is today. She shares her business journey and how it all started from a desire for meaningful connections with her own kids. Rosie explains how she was able to take her interest and hobby of decorating cakes and turn it into a small side earner, to the point of being able to leave her secure job in the public service and work on her business full time. Her main business is the Inspire, Bake, Create experience. This is an online membership that empowers mums who have little baking experience to create incredible cakes that everyone will remember, especially the kids who now have spectacular birthday cakes. To be perfectly honest, I really could have done with knowing Rosie many years ago. I can tell you now that my cakes look nothing like the cakes in the Women's Weekly Birthday Cake Book, and we're a world apart from what Rosie teaches her members. I hope this episode is yet another reminder that the future of our second half of life is in our hands and that we can shape it in so many ways to suit our lives. Enjoy our chat and getting to know Rosie a little more with me. A very warm welcome to the Redefining Midlife, Rosie.
Hello.
Good to see you here. This conversation will be good because we're going to cover your journey basically of where you started your bit of a hobby into turning it into a full-time business. And that for a lot of women is going to be an interesting thing to be able to think about from their perspective. If they've got something that they've got a burning desire to do, but don't think it could eventuate into anything, you're a great example of somebody who has made an interest into something that has become and is becoming even bigger now, business. So it'll be a good conversation that we're going to have.
Sounds good, Jo.
So, Rosie, our own life story never sounds very special to us because we live it. But for other people, it can often be really interesting because we've often got some good stories behind them. And sharing your story today, as I said before, might help another woman take a step towards following her own dream. But we'll start working out where that dream started, and we're going to rewind Rosie's life all the way back to the beginning. So you now live in Canberra. Was that always where you used to live, or is that somewhere where you went as an adult? Where did you grow up?
No, I am a Canberra girl, born and bred, most of it anyway. I did have a brief couple of years, I actually don't know exactly how long it was, down in Tasmania after my parents separated and divorced. But apart from that, mostly Canberra life for me, and a little bit of travelling once I was in my 20s.
Right. And tell us more about your young years. What was your favourite childhood memories that you might have had?
I often think about this because my husband can remember all sorts of strange things from when he was like 3 years old. And I don't have those really early memories that I can think of off the top of my head. But things that I do remember that were really fun sort of memories, I suppose, are things like, I remember once we went to and it's only just really small things, which I don't know. Anyway, so I had this memory of going to the drive-in movies, and it was a really cold Canberra night, and we were getting ready to go, and me and my 2 older brothers were jumping on the trampoline, and it was like frosty, and it was right next to our concrete back step sort of thing, but we just jumped straight on, jumping around on the trampoline. And I don't know if it was just like the coldness of the night and the excitement and everything, but that's just a really strong memory for me. So I don't know, it's just little things like that I remember.
Was it freedom filled, Rosie, or did you have were there lots of confines? Like, were you able to go on your bikes exploring or do things?
Oh yeah. We were one of those, the typical 80s family, I guess, that were, come home when the light come on, sort of.
Yeah.
We lived in a street that had no houses on the other side. So we had like the park and the drains, and then we had the ovals across from that. So we would be on our bikes or at people's houses. There were lots of other young families in the street. So would be over other people's houses and, riding bikes and doing jumps and all that sort of stuff, which was awesome. Like, loved that. Mum actually once, I think there were too many fights about the television. So she just took it out to the back shed and said that it was broken. And so that stopped those fights, and we just had to go and, play and use our imaginations. And I remember like climbing trees by myself and just having little games to myself, which I think we don't get to give that to our children so much. So now, because it's a bit more, maybe it's just me, but you feel a little bit more guarded about letting them out so much, I think.
Yeah.
Letting them roam the streets like we used to do.
Yes. Yeah. No, and rightly so, in a number of reasons why we might be a little bit more guarded, or were a bit more guarded as the children were growing up, because they were different times.
They are different times, yeah.
Yeah, which is sad. So would you let your kids do things like climbing a tree by themselves, or visit a neighbour for hours on end?
Yeah, so we actually have neighbours straight across the street who have kids the same age as at least Roxy, my oldest. And Archie's that little bit older now, so he can go across, and we'll just let them sort of roam between two houses because it's directly across the street, which is great. So they do have that little bit of level of freedom for themselves. So that's good.
So what was like, that was early years for you, Rosie. What was life like as a teenager? Was it an easy path like a teenage life can be, or was it a difficult one like that it can also be?
I think it was just normal, as far as normal teenage lives can be. Mum and dad separate, just backing up first here, like mum and dad separated when I was probably 6, I reckon 6 or 7.
Okay. Yep.
So, I mean, they were well and truly split by then. So it was sort of, we were still living between, like we would still be living between houses. Again, I mix up where mum was always living. Like we're always in Canberra after we came back from Tasmania, but my timeline is not great for all these things. But yeah, teenage, I mean, we were probably a bit naughty. I don't even know. I feel like kids don't even, go out and drink and stuff like they used to, but maybe they do, and I just don't see it anymore. But we were pretty naughty when we were kids and teenagers.
Yeah.
But not too naughty, So we had, like, I guess because I was living with Dad for some of it, and he was a little bit more oblivious to things and how we I think it was all just very hard for him to have all these teenage kids on his own, and he just didn't know how to handle it, particularly a girl, because I'm a girl. So yeah, we had a lot of freedom, probably too much freedom in some respects.
So you seized, didn't you? You went, right, I'm at Dad's this weekend, so I'll organise that we can have a catch up with whoever it was going to be.
Yeah, yep, parties and all that stuff.
Yeah,
fun stuff. So yeah, that was teenage years. But like I was at school and I was getting pretty good grades the whole way through. It wasn't until college when I got a car that everything sort of started to slip there, because going to the Cotter Dam and having fun there was better than going to 10th century literature or whatever it was that I happened to be in.
Okay.
Because again, my group of friends, they were all sort of in the accredited classes of things, whereas I was doing the tertiary level. So it was a bit different for me, I guess, as opposed to them. They were just sort of cruising, and I was sort of still kind of trying a little bit harder, maybe.
Yes.
But then, yeah, I got a car and it sort of slipped away as well.
So what were you thinking about doing career-wise when you were at high school? Like you mentioned doing 18th century literature. So, what was the idea behind?
I actually had no idea what I wanted to do at school, but I was good at English and I was good at maths. I was pretty all-rounder at everything. But I didn't know. I had no idea what I wanted to be. I had to do 18th century literature because I was doing a double major in English, and I had to choose something. And I don't know why I chose that, but the other option must have been absolutely awful. So, but I did things like children's literature, which I really loved, because we got to go and have time in schools, write children's books and that sort of thing. So that was really interesting for me. I really enjoyed that. And I also really enjoyed subjects like human movement, biology, that sort of stuff. So I had no plans outside of when I finished college. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to go to uni because there was no pull towards anything that was strong enough.
Yeah.
And I didn't see myself going to university at any point.
Mm.
Mm.
Okay, well, that's all very interesting. Did you come out with a piece of paper at the end?
Just year 12 certificate.
Well, if that's what you were thinking, Rosie, what was the little background idea of a career, or was it just nothing? I've got no idea.
I honestly had no idea what I would do once I left. I knew I'd get a job doing something.
Yeah.
But I didn't have an idea of what that would look like when I was still in college. We didn't have a lot of or maybe I just didn't go to any kind of guidance things from the teachers. But I feel like we didn't have anyone sort of to pull us in and say, you know, what do you want to do? So that's why I always hope in the schools now that happens, particularly once they hit high school. Like, that's what I'll be looking for my kids, that they're going to have that kind of guidance at some level. I guess I was also doing a lot of hospitality. Like, I started working in hospitality when I was 14. And that's pretty much what I did once I left school. Like, I did a little bit of travel once I left school when I was 18 or 19. Went over to Perth to visit my brother for a few months, and then came back and went straight into where I was working previously at the Canberra Stadium for the catering people, but I was in a administrative role. So went in full time doing that and really enjoyed it for a long time.
Yep. So that's what you were doing in your 20s, Rosie? Were you still working for?
Yep. So yeah, I like, these were the people that I was working for since I was 14 in the canteens and things at the football games. And then once I got into the administrative role, I was doing the payroll and just organising the events and everything. And I actually really enjoyed that. So I fell on my feet there, sort of straight into a job. I've always had money because I had the job all the way through, which probably didn't help with the naughtiness when I was little. Just worked at the football stadium and worked there until I decided that I wanted to go travelling overseas for 12 months.
Now, you'd had some good stories from there. So what age were you when you decided to go overseas for 12 months?
Yeah, so I was 23 at the time. I'd actually met my husband before that. We met when I was 20, but it was all very on again, off again sort of thing. He was a bit older. He's 5 years older than me. So he was, it was all sort of, on again, off again. And I was like, that's it. I'm going traveling. I'm just going to.
That was an off stage, was it? Right, I'm gone.
It needed to happen.
Yeah.
And so off I travelled by myself when I was 23. And I had friends sort of nearly every step of the way. So I went and stayed with one of my girlfriend's brothers in the States, which was nice to have that. That was the first stop. So it was good to have that there. And then went over to London, and I had some friends there who sort of let me stay until I could find a place of my own. Worked in the hospital in London, just doing admin for a psychiatrist and a whole heap of different doctors. And then went traveling all through Europe with friends, and then ended up by myself and going to Thailand by myself on the way back home. So came home when I was 24 and had seen lots of stuff.
Yeah, I bet. So did you feel like you were more ready for the next part of your 20s, or did you come back and you had itchy feet and you wanted to get going again?
I love traveling. I still love traveling.
Yes.
Don't do enough of it at the moment with the kids being younger, but I guess they're getting to an age now that I feel like we could probably get back into a bit more travel. So when I came home, I just didn't know again. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I actually went back into my old job and went, I can't stay here. This is like going backwards.
Yes.
So that was when I decided I wanted to try and get into the public service to have a stable career, like stable income and all that sort of thing. So I did a brief stint at the Canberra airport for Virgin Australia, and then that was shift work, hated that. And so I got into the public service, and I was there for, oh my gosh, I don't even know how long, 16 years or something.
Okay. So
But
what, were you in a department with the public service?
Yes. Well, I had no idea about the public service. All I knew was that you get in the public service and you get good pay and good, benefits and stuff. So I just got into whatever ASO 4 position I could find and who would take me. The guy who interviewed and gave me feedback on the interview was just like, oh, look, you weren't great. But I said, well, clearly I was better than a couple of people. But I laughed because I had no idea. Like, it's all so structured. And they're asking these stupid questions that I was like, why are you asking me this for? It just didn't make sense to me. I was coming from the private sector where you just have a conversation with someone.
Yeah.
And then I'm going into this interview, and it was just, I felt awful about it when I came out. I'm surprised that I got that first job, but clearly I must have been okay.
You must have been. And I guess the skills that you would have picked up when you were with the Raiders too would have really helped you you would have known a lot of different things. So you could fit into lots of different areas, I dare say, within the public service role that you went for.
Oh, absolutely. It's all, and I truly think, like, just, I could do pretty much anything. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Yeah.
Particularly administrative stuff. Like, it was a piece of cake, really. When I was at the stadium, I was the one implementing spreadsheets and stuff because they didn't even have anything on a computer when I first started there. It was all very manual, So I guess that built my confidence in that role, which could easily be transferred across to different areas of any admin role. Yeah. And then I sort of just
yourself when you first got in, did you? You just slowly worked up the ladder in the public service? Huh.
Yeah. So I just saw opportunities as they came up and went to lots of interviews, did them very badly a lot of the time. The second job that I actually landed with the Gambling and Racing Commission, the guy who interviewed me there, he's like, yeah, you weren't great. It's like,
there's a recurrent theme there.
Really? He goes, there was just something about you that we liked.
There you go. So
that's why we gave you the position. I'm like, okay, good. I'm likable. That's good. Now I can show you what I can do, I suppose. So
yeah. Oh, that's
so it was a funny little recurring theme there. And I knew how bad I was at interviews. Like, I used to work myself into a state where my mind would just go blank as soon as they asked me a question. Because I was so nervous. It wasn't until I was probably in the public service for 10 years that I was like, no, I can do this. And I got my highest level because somebody at where I was working at the time, corrective services, had pissed me off. Like, he'd come over and he'd said to the person I was working with that's at the same level, oh, look, there's this thing coming up. I think you should apply for it. And I was sitting over, behind them, and I'm like, well, if you, well, I'm just going to go and get myself that position somewhere else. And so I did. And off I went to education for 12 months at a higher level. I was just like,
good. You showed him, Rosie. Now, there was something that I was delving and prying into your background, before this interview. And in that prying, I discovered that you owned a bra shop. Tell me that story. I really want to hear it.
Yes, I did actually. So I've always been rather big busted, and growing up in Australia, there just was nothing pretty to wear. Swimmers were like a complete nightmare to try and find. So when I went over to London, I found this shop that was especially for D+ size bras, and I was like, oh my God, what is this place? And just fell in love with this place. They had all these beautiful bras in the right size and swimwear that I could wear. And I was like, this is amazing. So when I came back to Australia, I sort of brought that idea with me, and I was buying from them for a long time from the UK. And then I had one of my girlfriends, she's a bit the same like me. And so I just said, I just feel like we should be doing this here. Like there's a market for it. There has to be a market for it.
Mm-hmm.
We actually started just working from her place. And then we opened a little shop up down the road, and we had a bra shop for, I don't know, it was maybe 18 months, 2 years or something. But that was really early days too. I think that was 2006.
So did you have that while you were working for the public service?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've always had that little bit of a entrepreneurial streak. And yeah, so I was working there and there. So, I mean, we didn't know what we were doing. We were really green. There was no Facebook or Instagram that you could market on. And actually, I think Facebook was quite new, and we sort of tried putting a few things up there, but nothing landed because we had no idea what we were doing. But we went okay for a little while until it was too hard. And then it was just like, look, this isn't working. So it was sad to close it down.
Yeah.
Because I mean, just ourselves, we get so excited about new things coming in. It's like, oh my God, look at this.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, you would have had some sexy little pieces back then.
Well, it was just nice to be able to help other ladies, because they would come in and they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, because it was the same thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a better range here now in Australia. So I'm glad for that. But it was just being able to help other people.
Yeah.
With those same problems that I'd had. So, yeah, that was the rewarding part of it.
And a lot of those businesses, and we know ourselves because we're of what world we're in now, that so many, if not all, so the vast majority of businesses start with a problem that you may have experienced yourself, particularly for women when they create their own businesses. It's usually something that they've gone through that they know other people have got that difficulty with, and you want to help them. So that's going to lead me on to this next part where we're talking about, you and your business that you've got now. So how did your interest in cake decorating begin? And then how did it go from just an interest into something just a little bit bigger where you go, oh, this could be a business opportunity?
Yeah. So it actually, I guess I've always been a bit creative. I love, always done sort of art and that sort of thing. And it actually started was when I got engaged, and my husband's cousin made our cake for the engagement, and it was a fondant covered cake with some little figurines and stuff on it. And I was just like, this is so cool. Like, I would love to learn how to do this. And she just said, yep, come round and I'll show you how to do it. And so I went round to her place. She showed me how to cover a cake in fondant. I've still got the picture. It's a very basic fondant covered cake with a bow on top of it. And from there, I just kept practicing and doing little cakes for family and friends. And it was actually quite quickly, I just got more and more people asking. So I was like, I wonder what I need to do to be able to just actually make this into a legit business. Because being a food-based business, obviously you need a few, certificates and safety, all the safety stuff, clear that I know about, because I, have the words. But I just looked into it and went, I'm just gonna do it as a side hustle and see what happens. And yeah, away I went with the cake decorating. So I started that my first cake I made in 2011. So it might have been 2011. And then I registered my business in 2014, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. And then I was I was working full time, public service. By this stage I had Roxy, and doing cakes on the side.
Would that be during the week or weekends only that you put aside time for something like that?
Oh no, you have to do it during the week.
Yeah, right.
People think that you can bust these things out in a day, but that you can't. It actually takes a lot longer than what people think.
I
And
know too, Rosie, because I've done the Women's Weekly birthday cakes for children. I know how long it takes. Yes.
yeah,
Especially
it
when
does.
you don't know what you're doing.
But it's true. Even those
yeah.
cakes that are, they say they're so simple, but they're not.
Oh God, no.
Someone who doesn't know what they're doing, particularly.
And not an artistic bone in their body either.
But that's why he had the inspiration there from the Women's Weekly book.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does take a long time, and I was doing a lot of hours really between working in the public service and doing my cakes. So yes.
Then that changed from just cooking cakes to teaching people how to do it themselves. So when did that happen? Like, when did the changeover start?
Yeah. So I guess I would have people come and pick up cakes, and I'd still be decorating cakes, and I'd just be so interested. They're like, oh, I just love to come and sit in your kitchen and just watch you decorate for a day. Like I could just sit here and just watch you. I'm like, oh, okay, weirdo. No, I didn't. I was like, oh, okay, it's interesting. So I had quite a few people sort of comment those sort of things. And then once I started using Instagram and sharing different, not just posts about like pictures of cakes, how I was actually creating cakes and things, you start getting more questions from people. And so I was answering a lot of questions there. And it just came to a point, honestly, where I don't think my marriage would have survived if I'd kept doing full-time public service and cakes, because it was just too much.
Yeah.
So I had to make a decision. What did I want to do, or how could I change things so that I could do both? And I needed a scalable system in my cake decorating. Then, of course, we had COVID and everything shut down. And at that time, Roxy was in year 1, I think, and she was struggling with the home schooling. She wasn't reading well, all of that stuff. So I thought, how can I make it fun for her to learn and not drive me bonkers? And we came up with a cooking class for kids. So I would send out little packs with all the ingredients already split and some little name tags with all the ingredients like flour, sugar.
Yeah.
So that gave the kids something to read and to match up. Brilliant. And then we'd get on a Zoom call and we would bake together, essentially, with a group of kids. And so that's where the sort of the online teaching came into it in 2020. And then when we wound that up, because it was a lot of effort, splitting all those ingredients and doing all the things, it wasn't really worth the time that was put into it at the end of the day. That's when I sort of thought, well, maybe I could do that with adults and teach them how to make cakes for their kids. And so create, lots of happy memories for themselves and their kids. And also, give them, because I'm a mom of 2, and like I know how precious our own time is, and giving ourselves some time to do things that we enjoy doing. I really wanted to be able to give that to people too, to mums, like, give yourself a couple of hours once a month and come and decorate. And it's not just you that's going to benefit, like your whole family will benefit from it, not just through the cakes and cupcakes and things that you'll create either, but, you'll have that time to yourself and you'll feel better for it.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I didn't realize that the start of your business was actually with children and you packing up all of those ingredients and sending it. Yeah, that would have been huge.
Yeah.
So in March of this year then, Rosie, and when I say this year, 2023, at our business mastermind retreat that we're both in, you shared with me that you were going to quit your secure job in the public service that you've had for a long time and work full-time on your business. And on the final night when we were all together at the retreat, you actually pressed send on an email, and that was your resignation letter. So can you tell me how that felt for you to actually go, right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to leave my job and work full-time on my business?
Oh my God, scary as hell. But also, I think the reason I hadn't done it, because I actually hadn't worked in the public service for, I'd been on leave without pay for at least 12 months, maybe even a little bit longer. So it wasn't like I was still working and then I'd stopped. I had sort of already stopped and I just didn't want to go back. And I wasn't in an area that, full of nasty people or anything. The people were fine, but I just had no interest in the work at all. And just the thought of going into the office and, you know, whiling your hours away doing something that you didn't enjoy doing, it just used to make my skin crawl, like, oh God, I've got to go into the office. And that's what they wanted me to do. Actually, I think the final straw was I talked to them about coming back part-time, and they were okay with that. But I had to go into the office. And I was like, well, do I? Because nobody else is really on any kind of where you had to be in the office, because it's also flexible now since COVID. But they were like, no, you have to come into the office for your days on. And I was just like, yeah, that's not going to work for me. I want to be there to be able to take the kids to school, pick them up, all that sort of stuff. And I think that was the final straw for me. But also I had these, which actually another one of our masterminders helped me with. I had beliefs that were from childhood about, being able to provide financially for my family. So yeah, that was a big one too to get through. But hitting that send button was just like, oh, scariness, auto relief, and I think just all the feelings. Yeah. All the feelings for them.
Yeah, we felt them with you too, because a lot of us had gone through and done exactly what you had. So could empathise with you, knowing what a huge decision it is to make and what mixed feelings that you have with it, because it's saying goodbye to something else and then saying, opening yourself up to a complete unknown. And that can be really scary, because you go, right, well, it is going to happen now.
Yeah, that's it.
I've got to do something. Yeah, right, next step. So what advice would you give someone, Rosie, who was wondering if they could start a business from scratch, just like you did? Yeah, and following from what was a hobby initially to something much larger.
I feel like you just need to actually slow down to feel your way into it. And it's about knowing what you actually want. Like, what are you trying to achieve first? Like, is it that you want, why do you want to be in business? Do you know what I mean? Like, you can go into business thinking it's going to be easy. I know so many cake decorating, like there's so many cake decorators out there because it's an easy business to start. But once you're in it, it's actually a lot harder than what people think, because you've got to do all the things and it takes a lot of time. So I just think it's actually knowing what you want from that business, starting it, and thinking about the bigger picture, and then setting boundaries around your time if you're still working part-time. Or, you could just do the complete opposite and just sprint and just know exactly what you want. Yeah. And sprint to that line and just do it. I guess I was just I just sort of fumbled my way through the whole process, and it took a long time. So it depends if people are willing to take their time and work it out as they go, or, if they want it now, and it could be a different process.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, when you in a job that you're not really all that satisfied with, and there's something else you want to do, but that's going to be hard, but then staying in your job is going to be hard. It really boils down to choose your hard.
Yeah, it is.
Either way, it's going to come at a different sort of a cost for you, so you've just got to weigh it all up.
I think if you can have a sort of a vision of what you want your business to look like, and if you can think of a way that it can be scalable, that's not so time heavy, because lots of people, I think they underestimate how long things can take in business. And then they're going from a 40-hour work week where they're getting paid to a 80-hour work week where you're like, holy crap, am I going to be able to pay?
Well, that's right.
So, yeah.
You're comparing, aren't you, sometimes when you're seeing, like if you looked at another cake decorator online and you're looking at where they are, they might have that you're looking at their chapter 7 or volume 3, whereas you're starting right back at the first page of the first book. So yeah, it's a big difference to compare yourself to that, but you don't realize until you start. But that's not to discount starting, though. That's
no, I know. And sometimes you just have to start. So I guess I'm one of those people who just go and start.
Yes.
Idea will come. All right, let's just go and do it and see what happens. So there is that element of failing forward sometimes as well, I guess. We learn a lot about that, haven't we?
Yes.
And I will do that a lot. And I guess it's just sometimes people need to know if they have that space to be able to do it, I guess, or that, you still need to be able to feed yourself and look after your family, whatever. Have you got that space to be able to do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Rosie, where can people find more information about your business? Because I know there'd be a lot of ladies who would probably be interested in cake decorating or know somebody who might be. So where can they find that information?
So my website is rosiecakes.com.au. Also on Instagram at Rosie Cakes Canberra, and Facebook. I think you can just search Rosie Cakes Canberra in Facebook, and there I am.
Yeah, you can do what you're like. You can access the
Yes,
what you're doing anywhere.
Yeah, so I actually just brought some new members into my membership, and I do have a couple from overseas. I've got one in the States who actually joined up when we first began, and she was getting a subscription box, but it wasn't sending a subscription box over to the US, just was not working cost-wise for me. So she's come back in and as a digital member, so she can just watch the videos and come to the live classes if it works time-wise for her.
Yeah.
And I've also got one from, I think there's one in the UK too. So I'm interested to see how that will.
Yeah.
I think it'll be good.
Yeah, it will be. Well, that's good. Well, I'll put all those links as well into the show notes so people can just click directly on any of those links. So, Rosie, we're going to change direction now. You're in your early 40s. So the years of pre and post menopause are only just beginning to be talked about a little bit more openly now. But it's something we need to have to normalise for women because it's a stage of life that we're all going to go through. Do you know much about this stage of life?
Only what I've learned from you, Jo, probably.
Yeah. So do you and your friends talk about anything? Like,
it's funny, because I think since being in your world, I have been having more open conversations with my girlfriends about it. Yes, because we're all sort of starting to show some of the signs of perimenopause. So, yeah.
I know. And it's, I had no idea. And most women have no idea. You know about puberty, you know about pregnancy, but there's not the next stage. And I'm hoping that by the time our daughters reach this stage of life, they're going to know it's about to happen to them. Because you walk into it without realizing, don't you?
Well, yeah, and absolutely. Like I hadn't even heard the term before. I don't think before meeting you. And yeah. And so it's funny now that I've heard it. I do hear it a lot more, but I feel like that's just one of those things, isn't it? Once it's on your radar. You pick up a little bit more. Plus, you're probably seeing people of your own age coming up, and it just incidentally pops into the conversation. But yeah, I think you need to know about it when you're a young woman. I agree.
Just to know about it, that's going to be there, and this is the sort of thing that you can experience, and not to make it a doom and gloom thing either. To see that it's
it's just another stage of life. Yeah,
and it's also just a great opportunity to start looking after yourself. So, what are you doing to keep yourself well in this stage of life?
I guess I've always been quite active. I still play netball, so team sport. I like to go to the gym a couple of days a week. Just sort of started swimming, not anything too exciting, but floating around in the pool once a week. And I just try to watch what I eat, like try and eat healthily, go and run around with the kids when I can. That's probably about it. I actually I feel like I need to learn more about the perimenopause stuff, just in terms of how things your levels of things can change, and that can affect. I mean, you would know. I don't know. That's the sort of thing that I'd like to learn about, because I don't really know much about it.
It's just having that knowledge to know what to look out for. There are basic stages that everyone will go through, but not everyone's going to have symptoms. And it'll be on a variety of scales. So, likened to reverse puberty is basically what happens. Everything just starts to wind back down, and everyone will experience, like you and your girlfriends when you were young teenagers, you all would have experienced different things at different times, and it's be the same in reverse.
Yeah.
What are you enjoying about being this age, Rosie?
I I just think it's funny. I read a memo or something the other day, and it was actually a bloke, and he was sitting with a 20-year-old or something. And it was something like uh, about him wishing to be 20 again. Then he thought about it and he went, "Oh no, actually, no, thanks, no."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, that's exactly how I feel." Like when
Yeah.
when I was in my 20s, sometimes I don't even know how I survived some of the silly things I made. I just feel like once
Oh, I
I
hear
mean,
you. Yeah.
yeah, like just have a bit more of an idea about life.
Yes. Yeah. You're blissfully ignorant back then, which is probably a good thing because we wouldn't have had half the experiences.
That's probably true too. Yes. Yeah.
What are some of the dreams you've got for the future, Rosie?
We want to do more traveling. That's definitely something that we're thinking about. We want to get a caravan and do a full, months on the road. We're not sure exactly how many months, but that's why I've just said months. And I just want to be able to do what I'm doing. And I guess my business is still a baby, so I can't wait for that to sort of grow into a bit more of a mature business where it all sort of flows a little bit more less chaotically than what it does at the moment. And I'd love to grow it to a place where I can retire my husband because he's in a manual and he's getting older, and I think he needs to be able to get out of there, and I'd love to be able to provide that for the family. And yeah, just I don't know, just be happy.
Yeah.
Happy doing what we're doing, whatever we're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it
Yeah.
sounds like a good dream to have. So we'll finish up, Rosie, with this question. If you could look into the future, what do you hope 80-year-old Rosie will say about current day Rosie?
Oh gosh. I think at this stage of life where things are chaotic, I guess I think she just needs to say, just chill out a little bit, have more fun along the way, and it'll all turn out okay. I think it'll all turn out okay. Yeah.
Maybe you need to write that on a little Post-it note and have it right by your workplace, because I think 80-year-old Rosie's spot on.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for your time today, Rosie. Thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jo.
Pleasure.
Thanks so much for listening and sharing your time with me today. I'd love you to hit subscribe on Apple Podcast or your favourite podcast app and leave a 5-star rating and review. To keep spreading these empowering messages, please share this podcast with other incredible midlife women in your world. Join me again next week for another redefining midlife conversation. Thanks again for tuning in.